by 9 out of 10 dentists for sensitive teeth.
Some women who report sexual assault to the Ottawa police are angered about how they've been treated by the authorities. Tonight, we continue our report on how these cases are investigated. We show a controversial police interview tape to experts who help victims of rape. CTV's Natalie Piracero reports.
Something needs to change.
Therese and her sister Fawn reported being raped to the Ottawa police. They say they were sexually assaulted in 2003 by men they had met in a bar. They believe drugs had been slipped into their drinks. Therese still can't make sense of what she calls abuse by an Ottawa police investigator.
You were the one, and I've got it all on tape.
They abused me. They interrogated me like I was the criminal. They went out of their way to mess with my head and mess with my emotions at the time. And I think that they need to be held accountable for that, definitely.
Therese obtained their video interviews with the police through Freedom of Information.
There's no doubt in my mind that you remember a lot more than what you're admitting to.
No, I do not.
Now listen to me, okay? I've done a very, very thorough investigation here. I've spoken to a lot of people. I get lots of these files where people, they just regret their actions, and then you start thinking and saying, wait a minute, I couldn't have consented because that's not normally me.
The women allowed us to show the tapes to some experts.
No, I think you do remember having had sex with these two guys. And
Jessica Carfanini represents the Sexual Assault Support Center of Ottawa.
I think that many of the comments that were made in that tape were out of line. I know that the officer probably wouldn't see it that way.
The Sexual Assault Support Center says it has heard similar complaints about police conduct from many other women.
There are some cases where the police do a full investigation and maybe they don't find enough evidence, but that's very different from what happened here. I think in those cases, if they believe a woman, if they hear her out, if they're compassionate, if they don't engage in intimidation, if they are aware of their power and take responsibility with it, then it won't be so traumatic for women who are reporting sexual assault.
One of the best-known cases questioning police practices in sexual assault investigations went to court in Toronto in 1998. A woman identified only as Jane Doe successfully sued the Toronto police. The judge in the case said the Toronto police clung to myths and sexist stereotypes about rape.
I'm very sad to say that nothing has changed at all. In fact, the change has been a reverse one. It's worse than it's ever been. We're firmly locked into really old myths and stereotypes around the crime. The biggest one being that we believe women lie. That's probably the largest and truest and most difficult myth around rape and sexual assault. We think women lie.
It's a disturbing piece of footage to watch.
Ottawa law professor Elizabeth Sheehy worked with Jane Doe's defense team. We showed her Therese's interview with the Ottawa police.
Well, certainly the Jane Doe case demonstrated systemic problems in the Toronto police force in terms of failure to believe women, failure to properly and thoroughly investigate rape, and failure to put women's safety as a priority, you know. It would be surprising if the same problems weren't endemic in other police forces.
Statistics provided by the Ottawa police show that very few reported sexual offenses result in charges. Last year, 511 sexual offenses were reported. 118 cases were determined by police to be unfounded. 82 resulted in charges.
Sexual assault, generally speaking, is unfounded at a rate that is approximately double the rate at which other forms of assault are unfounded.
Statistics Canada estimates that just 8% of sexual assaults are ever reported to police. Compare that to 39% of physical assaults and more than half of all break-ins.
We're taking tiny steps, and we're certainly always asking the community, how can we do this better? How can we make it easier for someone to report?
Staff Sergeant Jill Skinner heads the Ottawa Police Sexual Assault Unit.
It is a difficult system. I mean, nobody's going to tell you that this is an easy system, but we have to balance the victim against the rights of the accused or the suspect.
I think that they need to do a better job. I think that they need to fully investigate cases. I think that they need to work out some of the victim-blaming myths that they may carry.
Victims of sexual assault who decide to report it to police should know their rights. For example, you can have a friend or victim service provider with you when you give your statement. And if you have a concern about the conduct of an officer in the investigation, you can file a complaint with the professional standards section.
I just hope that we can do something about this, where the police can be accountable for the fact that maybe they didn't do everything they could have done in this case.
It's a difficult job, and that's the reason that we've increased the amount of training that these investigators are getting. I mean, we are sending them on courses and you know, on conferences and networking with other investigators, networking with the community to try and get the information that we're going to need to become better investigators. My take is that the sexual assault investigations are one of the hardest to prove. And I think the investigators in there are the best interviewers in this organization.
I'd say a lot of perpetrators know, you know, that they're essentially going to get away with it.
I believe that they're still out there raping girls in Ottawa.
Therese would like to hear from other women who feel they were not treated appropriately by sexual assault investigators.
Eventually, I would like to get a group together, a group of women, and battle this issue as a group.
Therese has set up an email address for victims to contact her, morejanedoes@hotmail.com. She says she hopes that going public with her story will make a difference for future victims.
I'm willing to fight for this for as long as it takes.
Natalie Pirro-Serra, CTV News.
Later on CTV News.
Brace yourself. Jewelry with